Godzilla is known worldwide as the king of the monsters, but did you know that there is another kaiju claimant to that title? The 1999 Ultraman series movie, Ultraman Tiga, Ultraman Dyna, and Ultraman Gaia, The Decisive Battle in Hyperspace, introduced us to a super powerful creature called King of Mons. That's his actual name, not just a title. Today we're going to cover his entire history, both in real life and in the Ultra series. And once we've collected all the data, we will determine once and for all whether this powerful creature deserves to be crowned the true king of the monsters in place of Godzilla, or whether he's just a pretender. Yes, on today's episode of the Toku Professor, the stakes couldn't be higher. Let's get started. Hello everyone, I'm the Toku Professor, and welcome to the world's ultimate kaiju classroom. We have a royal share of content to get to today, so let's jump into it right now, shall we? So, for the behind-the-scenes creation of King of Mons, I found a good amount of footage of the suit on set, which is always exciting, but hardly any written information. We'll start with what we know that wasn't in the footage. Super-Eye Productions felt encouraged to make another Ultraman movie after the success of Ultraman Tiga and Ultraman Dyna, Warriors of the Star of Light, and thus they decided to produce another movie in which their Ultra heroes crossed over, with the main star of the show being the Ultraman whose show had just started airing, Ultraman Gaia. However, there was a problem. Tiga and Dyna both existed in the same universe, so a crossover movie with the two of them worked just fine. But Gaia, on the other hand, was an Ultra from a universe disconnected from that of all the previous Ultraman shows. So how could he possibly unite with his predecessors? Well, long story short, scriptwriter Keiichi Hasegawa ended up using the Red Sphere, apparently inspired by the Wishing Stone from the original Ultraman series, as the means to connect all the Ultras together without messing with the individual stories of the Ultras in their home universes. And the Red Sphere is also the source of all the monsters in the movie, so this working all the Ultras into one universe solution may well have helped the movie team figure out what direction they wanted to go with the main kaiju of the film. I was able to find a pink prototype design of the creature, done by the man who designed a huge amount of the Heisei-era monsters, Hiroshi Maruyama. I mentioned in my Scylla kaiju bio that this underling of King of Mons was supposedly designed to look circular. Well, King of Mons, on the other hand, was designed with a triangle shape in mind, and in this early concept art, that's not too hard to notice. I believe the monster's name was King Kronos at the time this artwork was made, interestingly using the Greek word for time. I wonder if time travel was considered for the movie instead of alternate dimensions at any point. Chronorm from Ultraman Mebius has a similar name. The Ultraman Wiki claims that when making the kaiju's suit, Kaimai Productions, or whoever was behind this costume, sadly the suit creator wasn't listed anywhere I'm aware of, took pieces off the Queen Monera prop from the previous movie to use when constructing the wings, and another source says the teeth on the abdomen of the suit were removable. Hiroyuki Okano got to play the beast, which we'll get to see him do now, but before we roll the film, I should also mention that the monster's roars, according to the Ultraman Wiki, came from the Jurassic Dinosaurs sound effect library by Sound Ideas, and interestingly sound just like Vedada's cries from Ultraman Cosmos. Alright, now let's see what we can learn from this behind-the-scenes footage. This neat shot shows you how they film monsters hitting an opponent with a beam attack. Obviously the beam isn't actually there in real life, but they do have little explosions go off. King of Mons doesn't seem as intimidating when he has to wait for someone to add some fog to the set before he can attack. I believe here this crew member is adding a solution of some sort to the monster's mouth to make it shinier, but it looks like King of Mons is getting his teeth brushed. Look how calm he is. Good boy. I guess he doesn't want to have to visit the KG dental clinic. Here he is looking dejected as he waits for, I believe that's the director, Kazuya Konaka, to explain the next shot. And here's how they filmed the scene where he stomps on a parking lot. In this shot, we can see the crew investigating his teeth trap mechanism. There's also several more behind-the-scenes battle shots, including, I believe this is his death scene. Lastly, this is how they filmed what I believe is the only scene where you can see people running away from King of Mons in the movie, which is honestly a really cool looking shot, like one you'd see in a Heisei Godzilla movie. Interesting that they filmed it during the daytime, even though it takes place during sunset in the film. Okay, for the second time this year, let's jump into the multiverse of Ultraman Tiga, Ultraman Dyna, and Ultraman Gaia, the Decisive Battle in Hyperspace, and study the entirety of the short-lived reign of King of Mons the First. It all started in an unknown alternate dimension in which humans were somehow able to construct an object referred to as the peak of civilization, created to fill their heart's desires. And that object was... a red ball? Seriously? We have those in our dimensions. Does that mean we've reached the peak of civilization? Man, guess I better go pick one of those up from the giant Walmart ball cage I can't help but glance at when I'm there, you're probably thinking to yourself. But allow me to stop you there, because this red sphere was no ordinary orb. It was actually an advanced machine with the ability to grant wishes. But it turns out people in that dimension weren't too good at picking wishes, and their greed ended up destroying that world. So, with no one left to grant wishes for, the sphere began traveling to other dimensions, and it doesn't appear things went any better in those either. Eventually, the sphere arrived in the main world of the movie, and ended up in the hands of 3 bullies from a school in Japan. One of the 3, named Hiroshi, had previously accidentally gotten a wish granted, and as a result, he became enchanted by the sphere and stole it from a different child named Tsutomu, so he could use it to summon a kaiju powerful enough to destroy this dimension's world as well. However, rather than using it right away, he and his unwitting friends decided to try and figure out exactly what they wanted their monster to look like first, by creating kaiju models with clay. Hiroshi ended up winning their little monster art show with this design, but he decided to take the wings off of one kid's sculpture and the top of the mouth of the other bully's design and add them to his monster to make it even better. Thus, the prototype King of Mons was completed. Hiroshi then had his cronies bring the original kids who had first found the sphere up to the roof of the school they had been designing monsters in, to force them to watch him summon his creation. He lifted the sphere up in the air and made his wish, and a blast of electricity struck the sky, creating a huge dark cloud. Lightning then struck some distance away, and suddenly King of Mons appeared in the city. Though, notably he was a different color than the clay model. Maybe the sphere should have given Hiroshi a partial refund. Seconds after appearing, King of Mons absolutely obliterated a nearby building, and then fired an energy beam called the Cremate Beam twice to destroy way more. People started fleeing for their lives as the unexpected monster stomped through the city and turned it into a sea of fire. However, all was not lost, for just minutes after King of Mons began his rampage, Gamu, the human host of Ultraman Gaia, who had visited this world for a short time earlier when the child Tsutomu wished for him to appear, was able to cross dimensions and return in a vehicle he designed called the Adventure. Gamu knew that this world needed him because he had learned of the danger the red sphere in it posed, and he couldn't have returned at a better time. The Adventure came soaring out of the sky and whacked King of Mons right in the head, knocking him over. Bullseye! Gamu then switched the machine to a fighting-oriented mode to engage the kaiju, and launched the Adventure's 2 arms at King of Mons, which took hold of the beast, allowing Gamu to zap the monster with an electrical current. However, after Hiroshi called out to King of Mons, the kaiju broke free and fired his beam at the Adventure, and Gamu had to abandon most of the machine in order to escape being fried. King of Mons whacked what was left of the Adventure with his tail, and then pulverized it at point-blank range. Luckily, though, Gamu was able to transform into Ultraman Gaia before it was too late. He smacked the kaiju in the face, and the monster fell to the ground again. Gaia struck the kaiju several more times, causing sparks to fly. But then he took hold of the monster with a bear hug, and that turned out to be a bad idea, because thanks to the mouth on his stomach that King of Mons had inherited from one of the other clay monsters, King of Mons had the ability to grab opponents who tried to tackle him. Gaia got out of the trap pretty quickly, but was then sent rolling by the kaiju. Gaia decided to use his photon edge to try and end the threat, but just before the strike, King of Mons adjusted the position of his unique wings called bone wings, and created a barrier around himself which completely blocked Gaia's finisher. That must not have made Gaia feel very confident about his chances. King of Mons then fired his energy beam at the Ultra, which quickly broke through his defenses. Gaia wasn't beat though, and was soon back on his feet, and began getting strong hits in on the creature again like he did at the beginning of the fight. However, the kids on the roof of the school ended up having an impact on the fight around this moment. Tsutomu was able to knock the red sphere away from the bullies, breaking them free of the machine's influence, but when his friend picked it up, he became corrupted by the sphere instead, and began wishing for the destruction of the world just as the bullies had. The sky grew darker, and King of Mons surged with energy that knocked Gaia back. Then, the areas on King of Mons' body that had been created from the other clay monsters suddenly became those monsters. Just they were real living giant creatures and not clay. One of these monsters, the aquatic Kaiju Scylla, is a creature whose complete history I covered on this channel just a few months ago, so you may remember him. The other was Baraguirus, a winged monster. By the way, King of Mons still got to keep the stuff he inherited from these beasts, despite them joining the fight, so having these two help out seemed like a total win for his side. Zilla and Baraguirus began beating Gaia up, and then King of Mons fired a blast of energy that struck the school the kids were on top of, causing Tsutomu's friend to drop the sphere, freeing him, but leaving all the children in a pretty bad spot. The three kaiju, including King of Mons, took turns pummeling the Ultra, and soon his color timer started flashing. This motivated Tsutomu to try and retrieve the red sphere to wish all the monsters away. But even though the sphere didn't corrupt him like it had done to the others, it still didn't grant his wish, because it couldn't erase anything it had already created. As he was finding this out, King of Mons picked Gaia up and started bashing him into the ground. I think we can basically be sure Gaia would have lost. But just in the nick of time, Tsutomu came up with the idea of wishing for some more Ultras to help out. So within moments, Tiga and Dyna, the only other main Ultramen the child would have been old enough to see on TV, arrived to lend a hand. Literally. Now the fight would be more even. Tiga and Dyna decided to take on Zilla and Baraguirus and leave King of Mons to Gaia, which I would have said was rather inconsiderate of them considering how weak Gaia seemed to be now, but based on this punch, I guess he still had some energy left in the tank. Gaia grabbed his opponent's head and kicked him and continued to battle as his comrades chased the monsters they were fighting elsewhere. When the movie finally refocused on these two, Gaia was immediately shown falling on the ground. King of Mons kicked him and tried to crush him with a stomp, while Gaia pushed back against his foot with all his strength. After a long struggle, he was able to push the creature away a little, get back on his feet, and transform into Gaia's Supreme version. He then kicked King of Mons so hard that several teeth on the monster's stomach were chipped. Guess he is gonna have to go to the dental clinic after all. King of Mons spread his wings and took off into the air, and then looked back down and roared, perhaps taunting Gaia, and then dove back down at him. But at that very moment, Tiga and Dyna succeeded in eliminating their opponents, and this seemed to affect King of Mons, because all of the extra weapons he inherited were suddenly damaged, and the creature plummeted to the ground. He got back on his feet pretty quick, and tried firing his cremate beam at Gaia once more, but this time Gaia's energy shield didn't give out, and the attack was completely blocked. Then Gaia prepared to try another finisher against the creature, his photon stream, and since I guess King of Mons couldn't use that barrier anymore since his wings were damaged, all he could do was take the hit. The king had nowhere to go. In other words, checkmate. Following this movie, King of Mons occasionally showed up or was referenced in minor Ultraman media, such as video games. We'll discuss these in the minor appearances section. He didn't reappear in the main series, but at least back then, this was pretty standard for movie-exclusive main Ultraman baddies. The new generation era of Ultraman did get into a habit of bringing back powerful monsters that appeared in the films for regular episodes, but this makes sense because without much money to work with, getting many uses out of each new costume they paid for was useful. It didn't seem likely for King of Mons to return in the same way, though. His movie had come out quite a long time ago by this point, and the original suit was very likely unusable. But then, Ultraman Gaia's 25th anniversary rolled around, and even though Tsuburaya Productions didn't end up making a true new generation Gaia show to celebrate, despite me guessing they would in my very first video ever on this channel, they did do a few other things to celebrate Gaia's anniversary. Ultraman Blazar took some inspiration from the 1998 show, and Ultraman Gaia and Ultraman Agula each got a new form to appear in stage shows. And speaking of stage shows, Tsuburaya Productions also had a brand new, high-quality King of Mons costume made to appear in these shows, such as at a Gaia-themed one held at Tsuburaya Convention 2023. According to Ultraman Wiki, citing this Ultraman Arc magazine, the main director of Ultraman Arc, Takanori Sugimoto, ended up hearing about the creation of this very well-made King of Mons suit, and he also learned that the team in charge of the Ultra Series toys wanted to release a new King of Mons figure. I believe this Ultra Monster Series 1. Thus, everything ended up lining up perfectly for King of Mons to return in an episode of Ultraman Arc. Takao Nakano was the screenwriter. According to the same source, the robot Givas was added to the episode because King of Mons was considered to be too strong for Arc to defeat on his own. It's nice to see that they kept the King's higher-than-average power level consistent. Shun Takahashi was the man in the suit for this appearance. In Ultraman Arc, King of Mons appeared in the opening once it switched to the second verse version, and then made his actual appearance in the show in episode 21, The Dream Bird. The red sphere, looking a little different this time around, showed up in the Ultraman Arc continuity outside this building, and was found by this lady, who used it to wish for a bird from a story she wanted to write. The bird she ended up getting was a baby Xandrius, which I guess in this universe was her original idea, despite baby Xandrias being an actual kaiju in other Ultraman universes. She ended up bonding with this little guy, who eventually became a not-as-little guy, and she tried to keep his existence a secret, but of course, eventually the public found out, and several Global Defense Force agents showed up, and without any hesitation decided to take the harmless monster out despite the woman's protests. Oh man, how could you do that to such a peaceful creature, you rash men? When you join him, tell Harambe we miss him, Xandrias. The lady didn't take this very well, and got so furious that she basically fell to the dark side, wishing for another monster from a different writing project of hers, named King of Mons, who wasn't nearly as peaceful. The baby Xandrias floated up into the air, and quickly morphed into the dangerous monster. I doubt any of us imagined these two monsters would be depicted as related in any way before this, and yet, here we are. King of Mons went back to his old destructive ways right away, stomping about the city and using his cremate beam to decimate everything in his path, until Ultraman Arc showed up a few seconds later, that is. King of Mons turned to face the Ultra and uttered a low growl. Arc charged at the beast, but he had to be careful when approaching in order not to be hit by the Kaiju's beam. Arc fired some little energy blasts, which didn't do anything, and then body slammed the beast, which also did nothing. King of Mons struck Arc with his hand and whacked him into a building, and then sent him careening across the city into another building with his beam. Arc lay on the ground in pain as King of Mons slowly approached. The kaiju started stomping on the winded hero, and soon his color timer started blinking. And the monster didn't stop, he just kept on stomping until, suddenly he did stop, sensing something approaching. He looked up at the sky, curious, and was suddenly smacked back really far by a fast, glowing object. It was Givas, a giant robot who'd appeared earlier in the show, who apparently, somehow, despite having been on the moon, heard the calls for help of the lady who created King of Mons, who now regretted using the red sphere to summon him. Arc now had a helper. King of Mons fired his beam in the direction of the teammates, but both of them dodged the attack, and Givas fired its giant grappling claw at the kaiju and took hold of him. Kinda reminds me of when the Adventure grabbed King of Mons in the Decisive Battle in Hyperspace. Arc, meanwhile, donned his Solus armor and started bashing the trapped monster, but was hit point blank by King of Mons' beam, which looked very fiery in this shot. Arc's armor protected him from the attack though, and the Ultra tried to grab onto the monster's bone wings while Givas attacked from straight up above, firing pointy energy blades into the kaiju's back. King of Mons fought back by spinning in a circle, which caused Givas, who had still been attached to the beast, to be sent rocketing across the ground, pushing Arc back with him, and causing him to lose his grip on the kaiju. The monster fired his beam right at the mechanical colossus, but the robot stuck out his blade arm and absorbed the energy from his attack, while Arc drew his Arc Eye Sword, discarding his armor. The Ultra and the robot both worked together, striking the beast with their weapons, but when they backed up and tried to use them to perform ranged attacks, King of Mons used his wings to create his barrier from the movie to nullify both attacks, and as the barrier disappeared, it created a shockwave which caused Arc to lose his sword. King of Mons grabbed Arc and struck him, so Givas came over to help out, at which point King of Mons started going crazy with powerful move after powerful move, one of which destroyed Givas' blade arm, culminating with a powerful electric shock attack that knocked Arc to the ground. But Arc had more tricks up his sleeve too. He put on his OP Galaxy armor and prepared to use the power of toys, or more specifically his Arc Galaxer, to finish the beast off. Givas helped out by holding King of Mons still with his grappling claw. Arc's attack didn't miss, and the resulting explosion was enormous. Givas was saved from this fiery burst though, thanks to the portals Arc could open while wearing this armor. The red sphere inside King of Mons survived as well, though it was eventually dealt with. Interesting that Scylla and Baraguirus didn't show up this time around, but I guess in this world, King of Mons probably took no inspiration from them. And making new suits of them would be expensive. So, what are the chances that King of Mons will be brought back in the near future? Well, Tsuburaya Productions still has this basically brand new suit, I assume, so bringing the kaiju back would be simple. On the other hand, though, he is a movie monster, so they might want to keep his appearances low so he remains, special. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with the creature coming up. Would you like to see a King of Mons return in the future, or should he fade away for a while so his next appearance can be a big deal? Let me know what you would like in the comments. Also, let me know if you think King of Mons deserves the title King of the Monsters more than Godzilla. Despite all of the cool stuff we learned about today, I could still definitively say I believe Godzilla should get to keep his throne, as he's done way more and has been far more influential. but if one of you would like to make the case for King of Mons based on the data in this class, I'd be interested to hear it. Let's check out the monster's minor appearances now. As I mentioned before, he's been included in at least one stage play, and a spark doll of him could be seen in Ultraman Ginga. He appeared on a Kaiju card in Ultraman Orb Episode 6 as well. This 2018 novel, which served as a sequel to King of Mons' original movie, featured the monster being summoned by the same group of 3 that originally created him, but this time for a good cause, to fight the novel's main monster, Kaiser Gyares XIII. However, King of Mons fell to this powerful foe. He was also included in Mega Monster Battle Ultra Adventure Neo, and in these games, Mega Monster Battle Ultra Coliseum, both the regular and the DX version, for the Wii, and Mega Monster Battle Ultra Monsters, which the first UGMMB show was based on, I believe. We'll start wrapping up by discussing King of Mons toys. In my personal collection, called the Toku Archive, I firstly have a Bandai Ultra Monster series figure of the character that uses a mold from 1999. I believe this mold was used for 3 different releases in this line, with each release having a slightly different paint job. Not sure which year mine came out, unfortunately, since I never had the tag for it. Eventually, the Ultra Monster series line became the much smaller Ultra Monster 500 line, which is still running now, though it's been renamed back to Ultra Monster series. A small version of King of Mons was put out for this toy line recently, and that just so happens to be the other figure of this monster that I own. While the mold on this guy is nice, he's almost entirely dark blue with hardly any paint detail, so at least to me, this newer version is a bit disappointing. Back before this new small guy came out, Bandai also released an Ultra Monster DX version of King of Mons. Some Gashapon figures of the beast have also been released, and very notably, King of Mons is one of the few Ultra Monsters to get an SH Figuarts figure, which looks great, but it goes for hundreds of dollars, so that's a little out of reach for most of us. This UMS King of Mons figure, however, I'm sure you'll agree, is a little more affordable. At the time I'm writing this figure is available on my eBay store, Geronimo's Giant Junction, along with tons of other Ultra Monster figures. If you're a kingly collector and would like to help this channel out, be sure to check my store out by clicking the link in the description. Maybe your home will become this royal figure's next palace.
And speaking of kings, make way for the king!
Oh, what?
His Majesty Kishimu-kun the Kaiju Heart, King of Mons and Master of Monster Realm approaches, peasant. Kindly get out of here. Maybe go grovel on the ground or something.
It is okay, Sir Pencilot. I like this lowly teacher's classes, so he may have a place at the table that must be round for some reason.
As you wish, my hoodie-wearing king.
Oh, I see. This class about King of Mons inspired a game about a king. Nice.
My dear fellow, this is no game. The Kaiju Heart is indeed our monarch, and you should not disrespect him so.
Wait, what? Animaniac is in on this too? I don't believe it.
Verily, he did used to be a monstrous bully, but since his actions made him a monster, he has pledged realty to the throne of the new King of Mons.
That's fealty, my young king. That being said, I will gladly give you my property as well if you ask it of me.
Okay, this is totally out of character for you, Animaniac. How did you get him to do this, Kishimu-kun?
It was easy. A red ball landed in my lap when I was watching TV last night, and I used it to wish that my classmates would crown me the next King of Mons.
You used the red sphere? That's dangerous.
My dad said I could play with it.
Well, I doubt he knew it had world-ending capabilities. We've got to undo your wish or it'll power up the sphere. But how are we going to end it? Wishing a wish away is against the sphere's rules.
Well, you can always just say I'm deposed as king.
All right, you're deposed.
Phooey, you used my idea. The Kaiju Hearts line didn't last very long, did it?
You abdicated the throne for a noble cause, little buddy. Now, how do we deal with the sphere?
Wait. Where am I? Why am I here after class hanging out with you Toku fan losers?
Well, this ball made you do it.
Oh, it did, huh? Then I'll get back at you by shattering it.
Good thinking, Kishimu-kun.